A given academic program may have multiple different pathways depending on the number of optional modules and the arrangement of optional modules within that program. So for example, we can see that the mechanical engineering MEng program here has 33 different pathways generated for it. Now that's a function of, as I say, the distribution of optional modules within that program. So Curricular automatically will calculate all possible pathways in a program and then allow you to investigate those different pathways. And we do that using the pathway inspector. We can navigate to it by clicking on the pathway inspector in the left-hand menu. Here you will select your program that you're interested in. So in this case, mechanical engineering from the drop-down, and that will immediately populate the key information for the program, the mechanical engineering program. And we can see that there are 33 different pathways listed for that program. Now, the very first thing that I might want to do is review all of those different pathways to see, do I have any issues with ILOs within those pathways? So for example, this mechanical engineering program is mapped against the AHEP ILOs for MEng programs. So I might want to know that across all of those different pathways, do any of them fail to satisfy all of those AHEP learning outcomes? And I can do that pretty easily. If I scroll down to the pathway survey block, so I can select the AHEP ILOs and I can see very quickly which of the AHEP MEng ILOs has the least amount of coverage. So this is essentially surveying for weak points in your ILO coverage. So for example, what this tells me is that the computational and control engineering pathway number 1, the AHEP ILOs ET1, EP5 and EP6 have the lowest level of coverage, and there is only one module contributing to those particular AHEP ILOs. And similarly, as we scroll down, we can see for each pathway which AHEP ILOs have the least amount of coverage for modules within that pathway. So what you don't want to see here, for example, is a 0 in your far right-hand column, which would indicate that none of your modules are providing coverage for a given set of attribute values. So that's the first level of analysis. It's a survey across all pathways to identify weak points in your attribute coverage. Now, those can be externally mandated attributes, such as Engineering Council ILOs, or they can be any set of attributes that you define yourself within the attributes section of Curricular. So once you've identified a particular pathway that you'd like to investigate further, you can scroll back up and select that pathway from the program pathway dropdown. So these are all of the pathways that Curricular has generated automatically based on the optional modules within a program and how you've constructed that program. So if I select any one of these, I can then look in detail at the metrics associated with that pathway. So the first thing that we'll see here is the pathway structure, and this is a visual representation of all of the modules within that pathway. So the green modules are all core modules or mandatory modules, and the lighter green modules here are optional modules. Every time I select a new pathway, some of these optional modules by definition are going to change. So these are broken down by year and by term. I can get a fuller view of these by clicking this button, and that will give me a little bit of additional information, such as the amount of credits associated with each module, and where a module splits over multiple terms, the credits split between terms. Now I can go directly to the module record by clicking on Go to Module, or I can take a look at the syllabus here by just clicking the down arrow here, and that will give me a quick view of the syllabus for a particular module. So I don't have to go over to the module record to check what's in the syllabus. The next block gives me the pathway learning activity distribution. This is a data visualization showing the distribution of different learning activities for this specific pathway. Now, this is an integrated master's program, which is 480 credits, which corresponds to approximately 4,800, well, it corresponds exactly to 4,800 hours. So we can see the distribution in absolute terms here as hours, or we can switch and see the distribution of learning activity as a percentage of all program activity. And so the bars here will give me the distribution per year, and tooltips will give me detailed information for each specific bar. The pie chart on the right hand side will give me the data for the entire program. And as you might have seen when looking at the program data, you can also select specific learning activities to view the data for that specific activity. Next, we have a table which lists all of the learning activities across the program, and the table is searchable and filterable, which is quite helpful. Next, we have the assessment distribution for this specific pathway. Again, the same layout as the learning activity. We have the distribution per year in the bar chart and for the pathway as a whole with the pie chart. And again, we can view this in absolute terms as hours or as percentage of overall assessment, which is probably more helpful here. And again, below this, we have a table indicating all assessments across my program. Next, we have the pathway syllabus. Again, just a filterable table that collects together all syllabus items across all modules that are in this particular pathway. And again, this can be helpful for a word search if you want to search through your syllabus pretty quickly to see if different topics are covered. Then we have the pathway attributes heat map. So this is giving me a visual representation of how well my pathway meets a particular set of attributes. So in this case, I'm mapping the Engineering Council's attributes for MEng programs. And what this is telling me is how my program is meeting those attributes. So for example, hovering over any of these squares, this one, for example, tells me that my module, Entrepreneurship 2, is contributing, in this case, to D6M, attribute D6M. The module's in year 2, and there is one module ILO within that module that maps directly to D6M. And so the color intensity is determined by the number of module ILOs that map to a particular attribute value. So this is helpful to show me the strength of contribution from different modules. Now, equally, I can view a binary heat map, which simply tells me if a module hits an attribute or not, and that's helpful in its own right. At the bottom here, we've got a cumulative heat map, which is just telling me for each attribute across all modules how many ILOs contribute to an attribute. And again, tooltips will give me the exact number. So I can download this matrix as a CSV file, or I can view this in table form. So here, we're viewing an attribute-centric version of the data. So it's the exact same data, just looked at or viewed a different way. So what this is telling me for each of these different attributes, again, because I have selected the AHEP MEng attributes from the dropdown, for each of the attribute values, it's saying how many core modules and how many optional modules satisfy or contribute towards meeting that attribute. So I can also view a module-centric view of this data, and then essentially again the same data, but this time as a function of the module. And so I can see for each module what each ILO in that module maps against. So in this case, this module, Multidisciplinary Challenge Project, is in year 1, it's a core module, and its ILO number 1 maps against SM1M. So if I switch back over to an attribute-centric view of the data, I can dig a little bit deeper here by clicking on any one of these rows. So let's say, for example, the top row here. This is telling me that there are 10 core modules contributing to SM1M, this attribute, and one optional module. But if I click the row, I can see specifically which modules. So again, attribute coverage details pops up below. And we have the actual attribute itself. And then below that, we have each of the modules that map against that attribute. But more specifically than that, we have the ILO within each module that maps to that particular attribute value. And so we'll see I think there was one optional module. Yes, so one optional module, in this case, Advanced CFD, module ILO number 1 is mapping against that attribute. So it gives me a good view of exactly how I'm satisfying attributes across my program. And again, those can be either attributes that are externally mandated. So in this case, we have the AHEP ILOs for master's programs, or they could be a set of attributes that you define yourself internally and map those individual attributes against the modules in your program, and then Curricular will do the work of aggregating all of that data across all modules within either a program or, in this case, a pathway. So in that way, we get a good picture of a pathway within a program. So it's important to remember that this is just one pathway of 33 unique possible pathways a student can take through that program. But with using these tools, it gives you a very robust way to confirm that your academic program is delivering the learning opportunities that you think it's delivering.